Morning. I'm Doug's grandson, and I'm going to choose to celebrate the life of my grandpa. So it's okay to laugh at a couple of the stories I tell. It'd make him happy. In thinking about my grandpa's life, I had all these fun stories for myself. One of them, I was 9 years old. He loved to golf, and somehow, I didn't click right away with it, and he got me so excited. Went to Midlothian. It was for a 10 a.m. tee time, so of course we got there at 7:30. And, I'm just so excited, and we're going, and we walk right past these beautiful links. And I'm like, Grandpa, where are we going? He goes, come on. And then I loved the putt-putt, so we walk right to the green to putt-putt, and we walk past that. I'm like, okay. And then driving range. Okay, that's fun, hit some long balls. And walk right past that, straight to the bunker. And we spent an hour in that bunker. And I don't know how, I don't know why. I look back and really enjoy it because we worked on the little things. We, over time, he helped to get me better. And, he went to the first thing that needed the biggest improvement. And so in thinking about these different stories, I've kind of have 7 key themes that have emerged for me from my grandfather's life. I tried to get it down to 5, but, sorry. He lived a great big life. What can we do? So the first theme that really emerged for me was personal responsibility. The way my grandpa did anything was the way he did everything. He'd make his bed every day. He would always do the dishes. He'd always clean up after himself. He'd always get every small detail right, and that translated to getting all the big stuff right, too. He taught me at an early age, when I showed up 5 minutes early to something, that I was late, and he really took that seriously. You're responsible for yourself and your time and what you do. With that personal responsibility, he had really high standards, this sense of accountability, but no standard was higher than the ones he set for himself. Also related to this personal responsibility, my grandpa was frugal, as I like to refer to it sometimes, a little bit cheap. I'll never forget when he needed his reading glasses at a restaurant, and he asked me to write the tip out, and he looked at it, and he goes, what happened here? I go, I left 20%. He goes, Jeff. We got to talk about this. And he also, I always like to joke around with him being frugal, he really invested a lot of time and money into things that were not just for himself, which connected to the next big theme of his life for me, which is this deep responsibility to the greater good. He was a very spiritual man. He believed in something better than himself, and so he devoted his life to helping not just his friends and family, but everyone in the world. He fought in the Pacific Theater in the Marines, and so much charitable work in his life. The one that he was so proud of was always the Evans Scholar Program, but there's just so much more. A third key theme, he always put family and friends first, period. He did anything and everything for and with his friends and family. World travels, I just heard so many great stories of him and RJ, Mr. Hansen, just together, always doing fun things, but always with friends and family. The fourth key theme for my grandpa's life, humility. He was never audacious. He was not a proud, bragging man. He felt lucky to be alive every day with all that he had, and that was all he needed. A fifth key theme, his work ethic. He used to say that no one ever accused him of being very smart. He was a very talented man, so he didn't fool us that he had the brains too. But he really believed that he achieved his life work and his greatest successes with hard work, period, and a lot of luck. It's incredibly inspiring because it helped to lay the foundation for me and my family to embody some of these same principles. A sixth key theme, he really believed that life is good and it's meant to be enjoyed. Golfing, skiing, boating, traveling, everything. Even the little stuff. He had just this funny little routine he'd do every single day He'd wake up, make a cup of coffee, and read the paper. And he loved it. A couple of my favorite sayings of his: "The good Lord has been kind," really helped to appreciate life from every day. One that's a little funny, but it just captured my grandpa perfectly. He'd always used to say, "Well, I wonder what the poor people are doing today." And, I'm like, "Grandpa, you can't say that. It's 20, geez." He goes, "Well, it's important to remember. He felt lucky. He literally believed that he needed to cherish every moment." And he did. The last and most important theme in his life to me that really transcended all else, someone else actually probably can say this better than I did. There are the two most important moments in a man's life are the day he's born and the day he finds out why. For my grandpa, my grandma was the reason why. Grandma, you were his greatest love, his great light, and the absolute great treasure of his life. Above all else, you were everything for him. Thank you, Grandpa, for your service and personhood, for your gratitude and love. You've bettered the world you lived in, the world you left behind, and the world that your friends and families will live in tomorrow. Grandpa, we love you. Thank you for everything you've done for us and with us. God bless.
Good morning. I'm Barb Stone. I'm Doug's daughter, and I want to thank you all for being here. When Dad walked into a room, the energy changed. He had a laugh that was contagious and a personality that drew people in. He was the youngest of Maud and Vernon West's 3 children, and some have said a little rascal. Growing up in Excelsior, Minnesota, all 3 children, Aunt Pat, Uncle Howard, and Dad, were raised with a strong work ethic and commitment to community. I can tell you my childhood was filled with stories of how Dad got up early every morning before school, no matter the weather, to deliver newspapers in the neighborhood. Dad's love of skiing began when he was a kid, and along with other youth in the church group, built sets of wooden skis with the minister. Then they proceeded to take a trip to the mountains to test them out and stayed as many days as possible until the last of the wooden skis busted. True story, according to Dad. During World War II, Dad and Uncle Howard became the famous West Brothers of Excelsior. The local newspapers regularly printed stories of the brothers who were fighter pilots and their many heroic actions serving our country. After the war, the GI Bill allowed my dad to attend Carleton College to finish his college education. There, he met the love of his life, Ginny Lorenz, my amazing mom. And soon he was no longer Doug West, but instead, Doug and Ginny, or Ginny and Doug. They married while still in school and began a partnership that lasted a lifetime. Dad loved people. He worked hard and played just as hard. He and his buddy, Julian Hansen, managed to shake up many a saloon over the years and shared a lasting friendship to the end. Dad passed some rituals down to his family. One of them was the regular Sunday afternoon drive through the neighborhood after church. To this day, summer times for my family spent in Wisconsin include a similar ritual of slowly driving around the lake in our motorboat, looking at the houses, commenting on the landscape, and enjoying time with family. It always reminds me of being a little girl in the backseat of our car touring the neighborhood. Dad loved the game of golf. Through his active participation with the Evans Scholar and leadership roles at Midlothian Country Club, he effectively touched and helped many young people. I still meet people today that share stories about Dad and how he was a mentor to them. Life was not always easy, and over the decades, life's challenges came his way. Adversity did not stop him, and his uncanny spirit to move forward was not only a motivator, but an inspiration. We were blessed to know him, for Mom as his wife, for some as his friend, and others as their uncle, son-in-law, and great-grandfather, and for Bill and me as our dad. I will treasure his spirit and treasure all the good he spread around. I love you, dear Dad. Rest in peace.
I think everybody here knows me, Bill West, the son, and I thank you all for being here to take the time and the energy to honor my father, who's affected all of our lives, some for just a few years and some for several decades. I can't tell you how great it was to grow up with him. And my sister and I had the privilege to grow up in a southwest suburb called Palos Park, southwest of Chicago, with a bunch of acreage, about 4 acres, and fruit trees on the side. Big enough yard where my buddies and I could play baseball and never worry about hitting the house or breaking a window. And my father loved golfing, so at one point we put up a golf green in the yard. It wasn't tightly mowed, but it was a good hitting target, which when he got me playing at age 5 took about a 7-iron, and ultimately it was a soft wedge. But we used to be able to play in that yard, and of course, this yard, 4 acres, had to be cut on a regular basis, so every weekend it was a full-day job to do that. And when I was a little kid, mowers were a lot different then, so we had what we called gang mowers, so there were 2 mowers behind me and 4 more behind that to get bigger swaths of ground. But it was a full-day job, and the hand mowers after that. So as a little kid, I got to sit in his lap for probably a year or 2 and ride around, and I thought it was so much fun. And I'd get off in a couple hours, and then one year I said, Dad, can I drive the tractor? He says, I don't know, you think you can handle this? And I said, yeah, I can do it. So I did. Little did I know that for the next 10 or 12 years I'd be mowing the lawn every Saturday, and he'd be off playing golf. So as we grew up, I had 3 really good friends that would come over every Saturday, and they'd say, come on, Bill, let's go out and do something. I said, I can't, I got to mow the lawn. He said, come on. I said, no, I've got to mow the lawn. And it was a full-day job, but he taught me responsibility and hard work, and worked in steel mills and copper foundries and forging plants through school and even after school. I had a brief stint then in the restaurant business, and he encouraged me to come back to Chicago and work with him in the steel industry as a manufacturer's rep. We had a very successful business, a great time doing it. Again, the hard work ethic. We'd be in the steel mills working with customers, engineers, mechanical people, purchasing agents, and then at night, you know, whining and dining and having fun, and these people became great friends, and to this day, I've still got buddies from, 30, 40 years ago that are great, great friends of mine. So it was a great work ethic. But when the steel industry started to change, I decided to make a move and go back, not to where I went to school in Los Angeles, but to San Diego. And made a complete career change into the securities business. So got licensed in stocks and bonds and commodities and insurance, and had a wonderful time, and met the girl of my dreams, who ultimately I married and produced my beautiful daughter over there, Kinsey, another daughter who's up in Chicago who couldn't make it down. But we had a wonderful life out there. But prior to that, of course, you've got to get married. And so we're in San Diego. Her family's in Florida. I've got family in Chicago, and we're going, oh, now where do we go for this celebration? So the biggest collection of people was in the Chicago area, so we went up to Chicago to get married. And of course, if you're going to get married, then there's bridesmaid parties, which I didn't know much about, but I had a bachelor party, and so that had to be planned. So I'm going, now who do I pick as my best man? I had my 3 buddies that would come over every Saturday afternoon that were good friends forever and couldn't get me away from mowing the lawn. And I said, well, how do I pick a best man without offending one of these guys? And I thought about it for weeks and said, well, who's been with me from beginning to end? My father. Who taught me golf and golfed with me forever? My father. Skiing trips and all the things that we did. To this day, I don't know anybody who's ever done this, but I said, what bigger compliment could I pay to a person than to make my father my best man? So I did. He said yes. And then, of course, there's a bachelor party that goes with that. So I had all these friends. My father was the best man. Julian Hansen, the Navy pilot, unlike the Marine pilot, my father, came along. They're 30 years older, but we had a few rooms downtown Chicago. I have no idea where we went or how I got back to the hotel. All I know is that I got to sleep on the bed and people were laying on the floor and on the chairs, and it was a wild night. And who are the last 2 men standing? My father and Julian Hansen. So it just goes to show that practice and conditioning and endurance really does pay off. And also proved another point that vodka is a tremendous preservative. So I've stuck with the vodka since too. So one example of how gracious my father was is a story I literally just heard about 2 weeks ago. And when we lived in this suburb area, we'd get the Chicago snowstorms that could be very cold and lots of snow. And we had some friends called the Webbers. Barb and Warren Weber had a young son, Dougie, who needed some milk. They were snowed in. They couldn't get out of the driveway. And so the neighbors didn't have any milk. And Barbara was talking to my mother on the phone about all of this. And my father's overhearing it. And he says, oh, no problem. Don't worry about it. He says, I'll get my skis on and I'll go down to town. And so he literally did. They lived about 2 miles away and the town was another 2 miles away. He skied into town, picked up the milk, brought it to them, and then skied back home. That's the kind of guy he was, gracious, always caring about other people. So he was a wonderful man to grow up with. It was a delight and a pleasure. And I'd like to talk to him directly. I think of you in silence, and I always say your name. All I have are memories in your picture, in a frame. But your memory is my keepsake, and I will always cherish it, and with which I'll never be apart. God has you in his keeping, and I have you in my heart. I love you always, Dad. Stay in touch. I know you will. But please don't ask me to mow the lawn for another 10 more years. I thank you for being a great dad. Thanks.